Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, Technical Agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, I wanted to talk about something that's going on out in this cornfield again. You know, we've been out in the corn a lot lately, but a lot of things are changing rapidly this time of year. We've got maturity coming on, but we've got some budding problems that we need to kind of be aware of potentially in these fields. I know we haven't really even combined many beans yet, so corn harvest isn't necessarily something we're worried about, but I want you to be aware of what's going on out here. And with this weather, you know, we've been wet here for a few more days. We've got more rain potentially forecast for the weekend, and we've also had lots of damp, foggy, drizzly days to keep these plants wet. I think some of these things are deteriorating rather rapidly, and that's not going to help our end of the season stock standability. Yep, I talked about this last year, and I'm going to talk about it again. There's some different things out here this year, but I wanted to show you what I see and make you aware and educate you so you can take your own walk in your fields to see. Let's talk about some things that are already going on out in this field. I've got, as I walk along in this field here, just so happens that there are a few plants that are already broken over and on the ground. This corn is just recently black layered. I would estimate it's probably 28% moisture, maybe 26, something like that. But there are some plants broken over, and as I go along and kind of do a push test on some of these stalks, you can see, here's an example of what I'm seeing. This is Physoderma stalk breakage. You can see this node where it snapped. When I push on it, it didn't kink, it snapped. It literally snaps off. You've got this brown ring of decayed tissue that the Physoderma is one of the pathogens that did this. It's really weakened that plant and allowed it to be very, very brittle at that node because that rind tissue has been disrupted and it's not holding. It's concerning to me that that's already got a few plants broken over out in this field, and if I push on some, there's a few hybrids I've been in where you can push a higher percentage than you really like to see. I don't expect that to improve as this corn stands out here. It's been wet long enough. I expect there to be continued increasing percentages of that to be aware of. Something else that's already out here that's showing up that's a little bit more common, there's Anthracnose showing up in this field. You can see disruption starts at a node, and that node starts to decay, and then black streaks on the rind of that corn stalk, as I show here. You can see the discoloration on the rind tissue kind of going up and down from the node. That's weakened tissue, and as that continues to progress, it's going to really disrupt the strength of that stalk. And that's, you know, one of our more common pathogens that allows us to, or shows us some weaker stalks than we'd like to see, and we need to be aware of that. Again, when we're damp, these pathogens come in on these plants when they're towards the end or they're mature and they're weakened, and they really start to show up as a increasing influence. But it's worse when we're damp and cool. Like most diseases, they kind of like that here at the end, so I think it's going to get worse. And then of course we have another problem we've seen repeatedly. If we have cool, stressful early season conditions, we end up infesting that plant with crown rot, but it doesn't really manifest itself showing up until later in the season here. And you can see here's a plant that it's already killed this plant. If we look down as I knock this plant over and split it, it's already got the pith, that center tissue, already consumed. So that plant's already ready to kink over at the ground level, and I expect there to be some of that in some of these fields that had, you know, marginal planting conditions, saturated conditions, shortage of nitrogen, any kinds of stress that could really cause that plant to really have problems at the end here. The other thing that, you know, is going to continue to make this a worse problem, you can see this corn here. As I drive around, I see a lot of this showing up now, and it's just like last year. A lot of this corn crop is really dying really rapidly, or browning up from the top down. With all this damp moisture, damp canopy conditions, diseases are really coming in here late. You can see here's, you know, some eye spot that you can really see coming in. That's really a disease that likes cool, damp conditions. We've got that, had that, so that's why I think that's coming in. I don't have it in this field, but there is rust that's been showing up here late, and that's what's kind of browning up this canopy here. And it's going to really, you know, speed up the decay of that, you know, that whole canopy and that whole stalk if that green tissue is consumed by disease. we really have things fall apart rapidly, and I think we could see that happen. So if we really want to feel confident, I know nobody wants to take corn out when it's wet, especially this year with the economics of things the way they are, but I would caution you before you make that decision, and I've said this last year and I'll say it again and I'll always say it, if you're going to make that decision to leave stuff stand until Thanksgiving because you want it to dry in the field, that's cool, but make an informed decision. If you go down the row and you see this, as I go through this area here, we've got probably over half of the stalks that as I push them just an arm's length, they're already kinking. You can probably see how weak they are now. That doesn't improve, and it's only going to get worse if we leave it stand out there. And it seems like just about every year we'll get a couple of days here sometime in October or early November where we get 30-40 mile-an-hour wind gusts knocking those plants around. What do you think that canopy is going to look like in another month here if we leave it stand, and we've already got half of them that are ready to kink? If you're going to leave the corn stand in the field, just go out into your fields and just walk around a little bit. You don't have to have an expert with you. You walk around, I think you'll answer your own question. If everything looks good, everything seems to be standing good, you push a bunch of plants and very few of them kink, it'll probably stand and be fine. But I'll guarantee you there's going to be fields where if you walk out there, you're going to want to go back and get the combine here later and not let it stand until Thanksgiving because you know the answer to the question. It's not going to be standing at that point. So I just want to make you aware. I think we all know as we drive around we can see what this corn canopy is doing. That's generally not a good sign. Green is good. When we start going brown, that's generally not good. And I think that's the case with our corn crop. So just be aware. Investigate your own fields, your own situations when you have time. It's too wet to get out in the fields here now with all this rain lately. Maybe now's the time to at least get a sneak peek. Some of this corn's starting to black layer now, so we've got some corn out there that's somewhere in that 25 to 35% moisture. We've got some potential here maybe next week for some weather to allow us to get some bean combining going. But just let's not forget this corn crop has been through a lot, and let's not let it cause us problems just by expecting things to look good from the road. So with that, that's this week's Fuel Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.